when you're offered death and any near-death experience, or being told that you will die and seeing that and knowing that, having scientists, having doctors telling you that this is a fact, it really changes everything in your mind. All your priorities, all the things you thought were important, all the things that you were angry about, people that you had something with, that you had anger or any kind, all those things kind of lose their weight. And you just kind of rise above all that and say, well, why am I emotionally attached to being angry with my ex-wife, or being so like in dispute with his neighbor who keeps on bothering me and parking in my parking space? All these things became trivial, and the greatness of life appeared. And what appeared also was my not looking at the greatness of life, but rather at all these small things.
Welcome, everyone, to the Spiritual Forum. I'm so glad you're here. I just want to remind you that I would love to have you subscribe to my YouTube channel and also the audio channels, wherever you're listening. And don't forget that I send out a weekly newsletter with all sorts of information about the latest podcast, segments from prior podcasts, my reflections on the latest podcast, and a spiritual thought for the day. So subscribe to that at thespiritualforum.org. So let me introduce to you my guest. He is Ray Crist, a visionary and master teacher devoted to sharing the transformative healing wisdom of shamanic traditions through the Jaguar Path School of Modern Shamanism and the Science of Healing. After a life-changing cancer diagnosis in 2003, Ray embarked on an intensive journey across Mexico and Peru, apprenticing under indigenous healers and Quero elders. For over 30 years, he has dedicated himself to sharing the powerful practices he discovered, guiding others on paths of healing, balance, and spiritual growth. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you, Carol. I am so honored to be here with you tonight.
Tonight where you are.
It's
morning where I am. So tell everybody where you are. You're in Greece,
yes,
right?
We are now living in Greece. My wife and I have moved in Greece, in the Peloponnese. We have a new place right in front of the temple of Hippocrates, the great healer and well-known physician of the ancient Greek times.
Yes. How amazing is that? That's so cool. I want to hear more about that. But first, what I would really like to hear, you have an interesting healing story. I don't know that much about it, so I'll be hearing it for the first time as my listeners. And I'd like for you to tell that story and how you ended up immersed in shamanism and teaching that.
Well, okay. I don't know where to start from. I'll share a little bit about the story or the practical, but I more want to focus on moments that really made a difference in my life and made a difference in saving my life. Moments that these shamans that I met were able to make a significant change that was also recorded at the National Institute of Health as a cancer patient and as a person that had an operation in National Institute of Health. I had follow-ups for every 3 months, every 6 months, every year, for the years to follow. So it was really wonderful and a miracle all around to be able to record this in CAT scans and MRIs to show the healing process and to see the healing process while it was happening. So in 2003, I want to say it was accidentally diagnosed. I was dropping a kidney stone from my left kidney. I was in terrible pain and I didn't know what that was. Turned out I was dropping, again, like I said, a stone from my left kidney. But when I went in to do to do an ultrasound and see why I was in pain, the doctors at the hospital here in Athens, Greece, where I used to live 20 years ago and now again, they said, we're really sorry to inform you that you have tumors in both of your kidneys and your lungs and your liver, and this seems to be really too late that we have caught it. And what we're seeing is that you perhaps have around 90 days to live. And I said, well, do you
Wow.
suggesting surgery? And they said, we suggest that you don't follow surgery, but rather just really enjoy the rest of the days that you have alive, rather than find yourself in one hospital and the other and just degrade the quality of your last, days on earth. Wow is what I said too, Carol. Wasn't what I said too. So what I did, I'll just fast forward a little bit, because again, I don't want to get caught up into many of the details of everything, but to stay with the essential, my whole being fell apart. My whole brain fell apart. I had major breakdowns of like trying to comprehend when you're offered death and any near death experience, or being told that you will die, and seeing that and knowing that, having scientists, having doctors telling you that this is a fact, it really changes everything in your life. All your priorities, all the things you thought were important, all the things that you were angry about, people that you had something with, that you had anger or any kind, all those things kind of lose their weight. And you just kind of rise above all that and say, well, why am I emotionally attached to being angry with my ex-wife, or being so like in dispute with this neighbor who keeps on bothering me and parking in my parking space? All these things became trivial, and the greatness of life appeared. And what appeared also was my not looking at the greatness of life, but rather at all these small things. I'll fast forward and see
Mm-hmm.
that I immediately changed my lifestyle, immediately shut down my business. At the time, I was a fashion and advertisement photographer in Athens, Greece, having in 20 years of an amazing career with a claim to fame, doing Vogue covers and having all the huge bulletin boards of the center of the city, of my work, etc. And while that part of the successful career was all great, it seemed like my soul, my heart was not feeling all that great. What my body, my soul, my heart, my body, my nervous system were more feeling were the stress, the 90-hour
Uh,
weeks of working, the being in a closed studio with no sunlight, and just going after the accounts, pressed by short deadlines, big money behind things that I was constantly responsible for, etc. When I was diagnosed, I decided to go to Delphi. The Delphi is the Oracle. It's about 2 hours north of Athens. The Oracle is that place where all the kings and queens would go when they needed to make a big decision in ancient Greece. So I said, well, this is a moment that I need to make a big decision in my life. And I went to the Oracle and I sat on the temple and meditated. And I heard this voice inside me that came through my meditation, my inner voice, or whatever that voice was, that said, he who travels learns or dies knowing more. And I'm going to say to that, one of the big things that had come up
mm,
for me emotionally was that when I was young, when I was 16, 17 years old, I had come across some books by an author named Carlos Castaneda. Carlos Castaneda was an
mm-hmm.
anthropologist from UCLA. In 1968, wrote his dissertation on medicinal plants and traveled from California to Mexico to apprentice with this medicine man by the name of Don Juan Matus. Not only did he get his PhD, his dissertation, Carlos Castaneda wrote, if I remember correctly, about 16 books until the end of his life in 1984 that were all about his apprenticeship. And I want to say probably read all of his books, most of it. And that, at the age of 16 to 20, had created this inner fantasy, had really stimulated this inner part of me that this is the most wild and the most satisfying thing one can do if you come in life, to really know what life is about. I used to think of it as like to look behind the scaffoldings, as if there's a scaffolding behind the sky or behind every relationship and how things are here, and to understand all that. And back then in the 80s, I used to refer to it as metaphysics. So I was really fascinated with the metaphysics and the mystery, right, and all that. So my big realization was that at the time that that's what I wanted to do, that Deep Ray wanted to do. But, by 18 and 19, I got my first camera, my first motorcycle, and the world of matter took over, and the sense of career, what's the best thing to do. And it was truly a wonderful career and a wonderful time. By all means, there was something beautiful behind it, and it had integrity, and it had hard work, um, and it was all good. But it left me 20 years later, when I was diagnosed in 2003, with the understanding that, hey, I didn't follow my heart's desire. I followed a social kind of like path that said, yeah, well, you're a photographer. It's a really cool thing, especially for a young man, as I was at the time. And again, I regret nothing. A couple months after this diagnosis, and having received this voice inside me saying, travel. And even if you die, at least go and meet these shamans and have the opportunity to have that experience like Carlos Castaneda did. And it was that next morning when I was up at the Oracle, where I had received this travel or die having learned something. I woke up, and it was really interesting because the hotel I was staying at looked down in the valley of Iter. And down in the valley is a big cave, which in ancient times was called the entrance to Hades, to the underworld. And I was falling apart, and I'm like, well, since I'm here, I may as well walk down there and go into the cave and find my way to the underworld and get down on this. And this sentence popped up in my head from one of Carlos Castaneda's book, where Don Juan tells Carlos, when death knocks on your door, change your address. And they're like, oh my God, this is it. This is the double thing. It's just like, go learn, die at least knowing something, and leave this place. Because wherever this cancer had come into my body, it had to do with the place I was living. May it have been an environment around me. May it have been the food I ate. May it have been the polluted city of Athens. May it have been the fact that I would smoke and drink as a young man. All those things were there. And returning from the Oracle, I grabbed the backpack, literally grabbed the backpack, and told 3 friends that if they were interested in my furniture and in my clothes and in my motorcycle, I just gave everything away. Within 4 or 5 days, I was in an airplane flying out.
Oh, gosh.
It was devastating. But, looking back, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Sure, I was successful. Sure, I was, quote unquote, famous with my Vogue covers and all of that. But there was a deep lack, and I know it very well. People outside were like envious of like, oh, I'm driving these cars, or I'm like the models in the world of fame and the world of, lights. But all those were really literally 2-dimensional and lacked depth, lacked essence. It was just images, really, which I was called to create, to make things look better, to make things everyone would want, right? Literally advertising all of these, but I realized useless things, mostly useless things. My first stop was at Johns Hopkins. I wanted to visit a hospital that I would trust more, or like just see what was happening, because I was past the 3 months that I was given at this point. I had a curiosity to see, well, where am I new? Do I still have another 3 months, or what's happening here? So as I went into Johns Hopkins, the head of the department, looking at the CAT scans and MRIs, raised his hands, and he said, I'm really sorry. And I said, well, isn't there anything that I could do? And he said, the best thing you could do is take care of your affairs. Don't leave things behind for other people to do for you. Now, great advice. I still to the day, every day, take care of my affairs. I take care of my beloved wife. I take care of our home, our cats. I take care of my beloved son, who is now 22, and I'm happy that he has a live father, and we have a wonderful relationship. I take care of affairs, and I take every day when I open my eyes as an amazing bonus. Like, oh, this day I wasn't supposed to have. What is the best thing I could do with it? How can I really enjoy it in the sense of making it count, in the sense of making it count not only for me, but count for other people around me too? While they gave me that, I'll call it sentence, because that's heartfelt. uh, They also reached out to me a few days later and said, would you be interested in taking a part at the NIH and in a study of the NIH, where we offer you a first surgery, and then from there, see if we're going to move to next surgeries, etc. On my right kidney, it was really clear that it was a really big tumor that was beyond big, and was really clear that was the beginning of all this that hadn't started to metastasize. Now, I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to die, I may as well be useful to society and to humanity in some way, and might as well be a part of this study. So in January, and now we have reached January 2005, I'm pushing some 18 months after my first diagnosis. I do my surgery in National Institute of Health, and first here I need to pause and bow to all the doctors at both in Johns Hopkins and in the National Institute of Health, the administration people, the nurses, everyone. A bow and offer a big thank you. I owe my life to them. I owe my life to, and I'm grateful for their sweetness, their humanity, their awesomeness. I realized humanity and kindness in a whole other level than I ever knew before. So big shout out to all of them, and the people that work in this industry, people that work in the hospitals, and they offer their life in helping others. Soon after my surgery, I got on an airplane. A few months later, I got on an airplane and traveled to Peru. In that in-between time that I was waiting for my surgery, I traveled through Mexico. I met several shamans, and I say wonderful people, sweet people. I didn't find my people. And that's not to say.
Can we?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just want to pause and reflect, and then have you continue, okay? Because you've already said so much. So I just want to reflect on a few things that you've said, and then we'll pick up from Mexico. Because in the beginning, I thought it was really interesting when you said that when you were offered death. I thought that was a really interesting way of putting it, because it was an offering for you. you were offered that, and you took it as an opportunity. I think that you talked about looking behind the scaffolds. You talked about it's almost like the scales of your eyes, like Paul on the road to Damascus, that the scales fell off your eyes, and you saw a new something. I only want to point this out because it's a really interesting metaphors for everybody's spiritual journey, that we're living in this reality that is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of matrixy. There's something about this world of form that's very addictive. And then this being offered death caused you to look behind the scaffolds, and you saw something else, and you noticed that you weren't following your heart. And I think most of us are walking around feeling that way. I think most people, or they're not aware, but most people are living this physical world life, the material life, and there's something that is so stuffed down low that they're not even sure that the dissatisfaction has bubbled up such that they would take action. And this whole thing about this death sentence gave you the opportunity to completely shift your entire life. And all of us are kind of like living our lives until that death sentence comes. And for many of us, it'll be 96, 99, 82, 75, whatever it is. But in the meantime, we live this material world. And we don't have to wait for that death sentence. We can just look behind the scaffolds and see what life has for us. and listen within. You listened within and you heard travel. I think that was beautiful. Not everyone's going to hear travel, but you heard travel. And then you gave everything up and then you pursued a new life. I just wanted to point that out for everybody as they are looking at their own lives, because not everybody is faced with a cancer diagnosis, but all of us have this calling, I think, within us, deep within us, to follow our heart, and we don't know how to do it. So I think that your story is going to help people maybe listen a little more closely. So I just wanted to reflect on a few of those things before you go forward. So next thing you did is you went to Mexico and you found lovely people, but they weren't your people. And I'm just really curious also, like, how did you decide I'm going to Mexico? Did you decide I'm going to go pursue shamanism? Was that something that was just kind of came to you? Or was that something that was, like you're spinning the globe and you put your finger on something and it says Mexico?
Well, first of all, I have to say you're an amazing listener, Carol. Thank you so much. This is that amazing. That's fantastic. The whole idea of my traveling was to follow Carlos Castaneda's steps. What I knew of as shamans was only a reference from these books. He referred to him as a sorcerer. I had a sorcerer, someone that was in the magic world. There were wonderful curanderos, healers and sorcerers, brujos, different names for them throughout Mexico. And I could have found a person there. It just didn't happen. But one person I had found, because I first went there, and just not confuse people with the timetable, but it was before my surgery that I went down to Mexico first. I went to Johns Hopkins. I went to Mexico. I came back. They were offering me the NIH. So, but when I went to Mexico, there was this guy, and unfortunately, he never even kept his name or anything. But he played a huge role, and maybe I owe him everything, and I didn't know at the moment. And that's a great lesson to really pay attention to every single person in front of us, because we tend to evaluate people as important or unimportant. And that great, teaching that comes from the deeper teachings, like every person can be your greatest teacher. But here I am, and there's this in one of the ancient sites in Mexico, and I'm like, maybe this guy's a shaman, maybe he's a tourist shaman, maybe he is, maybe he's not, but he's rattling across my body. And he's like, my manito, my little brother, there's these things here that are okay. But here, he's pointing out to my right rib cage. He says, this you have to go to the shamans up north to take care of. And I'm like, oh my God, now I have to go to where, like Antarctica? I'm seeing myself with sled. I was trying to find the Inuit shamans. And I said, where? Alaska? And he looked at me as if I had two heads. He said, no, Hermanito. He looked at me as if I was a fool. He said, no, Estados Unidos. You want to go to the United States? He said, there's no shamans in the United States. He said, yes, there are. They're called surgeons. Well, here we are. And he just opened my brain, because I was caught between these two worlds. I was like, well, I can either go this direction or I can go that direction. And there is not an either or. When death knocks at your door, it's everything. It's everything. You need to step up on all levels and be humble enough to ask for help and to give yourself first that help. So that was really strong in pushing me towards the direction of, I should do a surgery, and and I did it. And like I mentioned, it's a big part. But here to say this, because I feel this is perhaps the most important thing I teach through my school, because all of this resulted in my creating a shamanic school as a paying it forward as a result of all my own adventures. All my adventures been, in a way, if you want, recorded in some really important shamanic tools that can work on modern people and can change someone's life in the modern world. So here I am, and I'm going to say that big thank you to the surgeons. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't had that surgery. Big thank you to the shamans that I worked with and still work with today. 5 with one of his past teachers and shamans from Peru that actually allowed me to change the way I was thinking. They allowed me to change my whole nervous system, endocrine system, and the way I viewed the world. Because if I hadn't, and if I said, sure, I did the surgery, it was successful, let me go back to that 90-hour weeks of Vogue and Mercedes and
Mm-hmm.
whatever advertisements, that would have only led me to where it originally led me, to cancer coming back and to my dying. So working with the shamans is what really also really made me be here today. So I'll fast forward and say, here I am and I'm in front of this amazing shaman by the name of Don Francisco Flores. He is a renowned shaman. If there's any book on shamanism, the books that are out there have reference to him. He's the elder of the Quero Nations people. And I'm on my knees and I say, Don Francisco, please save me. I have cancer. Back home, I have this 2-year-old boy who won't know his father. He will grow up as an orphan from his dad. He will never get to meet his father. Big source of pain for me and focus in all that turmoil of what I was losing. And he reached down and he just held me by the shoulders and helped me stand up while saying to me, said, I can't heal you, but I can train you how to be a shaman and you can heal yourself. And that, just that
Mm-hmm.
word, those words, that sentence, his gentle, loving encouragement of holding me by the shoulders, me standing up was the first time, and now close to a year and a half, close to 2 years now after my surgery, from the original diagnosis and having had the surgery, that I realized that, whoa, I need to take full responsibility. I need to find my power from within. They're all reaching from the outside, trying to help from the inside. The inside now has to reach up and out to them to meet them somewhere. And it was a changing moment. It was a moment that my whole life changed. And I said, yes, Don Francisco, I will be your best student. I will be your best student. Like, where do we start? I wiped out my tears. I said, where do we start? What are we doing? Tell me and I'll do it. Tell me and I'll do it. So there was the beginning of my apprenticeship, and I started working with different tools, with different shamanic tools that I quickly discovered had a deeply and clear and profound psychotherapeutic essence to them. I can see now we're 18 years later, of course, cancer-free and as I said, leading a school, one of the leading schools of shamanism, the Jaguar path. Now I see that the work that the shamans do is deeply psychotherapeutic. And when I say deeply, I mean, it's one thing you're working with the emotions and you're talking about it, but there's another thing to reach deeper to the emotions on a hormonal level and change it on an endocrine level. What are my glands doing now? Because you say, oh, I was angry or I was frustrated or I was sad. But where do all these emotions live and what are they? That's what I started learning. That's what I didn't know I would be studying. That's what I now know shamanism is. For me in my head, and for many people out there, I see the word shaman is overused, abused, misunderstood. It's like everyone's like, I just had an imaginary thought. Like I know what the word shaman is, but now having worked with them and being familiar with so many, and this being my life, I have a very, first of all, informed opinion. And that's one of the things that I learned, and I want to say this to everyone to hear. While I was going there with this imagination that I would meet these men and women of some super power, extra human power, I met them, and as I stayed with them at their homes, as I traveled with them, as I worked with them, I came to a great realization that their superpower is the power of affection. Affection, affection, affection. Affection is the essence of energy, of life energy, working, flowing, being, expanding, shining. There is nothing bigger for me. Bowing to other healers and bowing to Christ as well, I feel that was Christ's essence. That's what he offered. That's what is the source of his power, or what maybe the source was God himself, his Father. But what he offered to those here and what really made a difference for people here was that affection. Well,
Okay, let's pause again. Oh, even because you're saying so much, there's so much richness in what you're saying. Okay, so first of all, you can heal yourself. I think is what Jesus did do. I think, it was not I that heals you. It's the power that within you. And he always asks, do you want to heal yourself? Do you want to be healed? Because without that, yes, I want to be healed. No one was healed. It wasn't him doing it. So that shaman is right. I can teach you to become a shaman and you can heal yourself. That's where all of the power is. I have to say that the word affection is an interesting choice of words. I'm surprised. I think it's interesting. I actually haven't heard anybody point to that word. I've heard compassion. I've heard love. And so I'm really interested in why you choose affection.
well, behind compassion and behind love and the essence of many other words, synonyms, the essence of it, the juice of it, what makes love and compassion spark is affection. Is a affection.
Okay.
On one hand, we're looking outside, includes acceptance, admiration to another, giving them time, forgiveness, as well as compassion,
Yeah.
empathy, and love. And
It's a beautiful word.
like
Yeah,
what
I
I
like it.
found, like I just said earlier, is like what I found was like I was living in my head and things were in my head. What these men and women helped me do is be in my body, just come into my heart, but also realizing, because I hear a lot of people just be in your heart, but be in your head. I've realized what this means in the physiology of things, right? Because knowing that I was there to heal tumors, to save my life, I wasn't ready to accept any new agey, theoretical, nice words. I needed work. I needed things that will shrink tumors. I needed something that was I could grab on, that it would actually work, that would actually save my life. So in that, what they pointed out and how they brought me into it was the realization that when we talk about our emotions, of the full array of emotions that we have, and they're not that many actually, but from anger to disappointment to love and enthusiasm and everything in between, right? From the positive to the negative emotions that we experience as mammals, as humans. All of those things we consider are in our head. And a lot of them we take very personally. It's like when I get angry with someone, I feel that I'm angry because so-and-so insulted me, meaning that they went against my personal values, meaning that if I ask 100 friends, they will agree with me that what they did was not correct. And it's just not, and I am entitled righteously to be angry. Okay, all that we could say is what we usually think. And to an extent, it's true. But if we take a moment and pause and exclude everyone else, because at the end, when you're dying, you're alone, so you exclude everyone else, where was that anger? Because they didn't come and they said, here, I have a bucket or a few bags of anger and I'm going to give it to you. And now you're holding this anger inside you. They didn't give me anything. They did something I didn't like, purposefully or not, or accidentally. The thing is that anger was born inside of me. And that was a big change in understanding. A, that I am responsible for my emotions. B, that these emotions have nothing to do with my head, but they all live somewhere. So I began to in essence, study Chinese medicine along with these shamans and shamanism and understand that anger lives in our liver. Our liver will secrete, it's like someone irritates me and immediately my liver is going to secrete this green bile, is going to tell my adrenals to secrete cortisol and adrenaline. And now I'm shaky and upset. And now every thought I'm making, because this is in my blood flow, every thought and action now are guided by this chemistry that's running in my veins. Regardless if I'm right or wrong, let's just say I'm right. Let's just say I'm very right that what this person did was despicable. Because I'm going to say that all our emotions are valid. But do I need to let my emotions guide my life? So I'll pause here and I'll say this to get deeper into and give credit to where it's due. I'm doing my work with Francisco, and about a month later, I travel from the Andes down into the jungle. Someone told me about this medicine man in the jungle by the name of Maestro Panduro. I'm sure that there's people that hear that name and will know it. He's met and healed thousands of people and changed thousands of lives, and now has passed. May he rest in peace. Although I doubt he's going to be at peace. He's not having a party up there. Reaching Darcy's life.
He may be
and
back.
maybe back. But as I'm there, I'm tired because I had to take an airplane. I had to take a boat. I had to walk through the hot jungle. And this is in south of Peru, East Peru, close to the borders of Bolivia. I'm exhausted. I haven't seen my son. No one's guaranteed me that I've beaten cancer yet by far. And now with all this exhaustion and falling on my knees and I'm crying and I tell him to that story. I said, help me, I'm dying from cancer. I'm crying. I'm on my knees. And he did something quite opposite than Francisco did. He put his hand right in front of my face. He put his hand and said, stop. Said, and he leaned and said, I don't care about my emotions. What makes you think that I'm going to care about your emotions? I was taken aback. I was totally taken aback. I stopped crying and my brain was doing somersaults of like, where the hell am I? I'm going to die here in the jungle. They're probably going to push me to that ditch. No one will know that I was ever here. What a fool I am. I'm standing up. I'm wiping my tears. And I want to say to this guy, you're not a healer. You have zero sympathy and empathy. You're not kind. I'm like, and I take this inhale. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I just inhale. And I'm standing in front of him now, a little, not aggressively, but definitely defensively. Like it's, wait a minute. I'm inhaling. He puts his hand on my shoulder. He says, okay, I see now you're ready. Let's start the work. So I want to say two things of this. One is affection. You get love and then you get some hard love. This guy's last name was Panduro, hard bread, right? He said hard bread, hard love. They sort of call him, amor duro, hard love. Himself. I love him. I love him till today. I've gone to the jungle years later, kept on going, and would sit where we would sit together. I'd sing where we would sing together. I remember, I still today love him and have him in my heart, because he really snapped me out of what? He snapped me and he made me realize that there is a moment that we all fall into self-pity.
Yeah, that's what I was going to guess. Okay.
And it's impossible not to, because there's this part of us that loves life, that acknowledges us as a young child that came into life one moment. There's this 5-year-old, 6-year-old Ray, this child, and this child now is dying, regardless if he was 40. It used to be a 6-year-old, and there's like, you feel, and what shamans say is that self-pity is indestructible. You just can't buy into it because it's indestructible. It's not a conversation you can open. And that's what he showed me. He's like, I'm not opening this conversation with you. I'm not going to walk you out of those emotions. It's like, I'm not a therapist in New York City who has liability, who has to slowly talk to you for years, hoping that you change your emotion. See, you could die in this jungle. You could leave and die somewhere else. This is life. It's a jungle. I mean, this person was a jungle man, right? He was a jungle man. He was wild. He was a jungle man and a wonderful man. And because he was healing and helping so many people, he didn't have time to babysit anyone. And later, years later, I was thinking of Mother Teresa. It's like, and someone stopping her as she was walking to the orphanage and saying, well, can you help me? I imagine she'd push people aside and say, get off my way. I'm going to the orphanage. I don't have time for self-pity. I don't have time for you that you're 40 or 50. Let's take care of the 5-year-olds, the 3-year-olds. It's on a mission. In that sense, he gave me a whole, I experienced the wild in the jungle, and the wild part of me really awoke, and this other edge that I never knew. Sure, I was a photographer, and I had some new, what is called it? I was like confidence as a non-photographer or whatever. But really, when everything broke down and fell apart, there was no heart behind it. I was in, again, self-pity, fear, and sadness. I was losing my life. Those were also valid emotions. I was dying. It's valid to be sad. But, and here I'll say this sentence and open it to any other questions, because this is the turn, and this is where the Jaguar path came from, the jungle. The path that I took in the jungle is that was the moment that I realized that I can take over my emotions, that I can study my emotions, that I have to step out of them. And I realized what he said when I got up and now I was not crying, that moment there was a big shift of chemistry in my own body, from self-pity, fear, and as I said earlier, and fear, anger, resentment, everything that comes up with dying. All those were put aside in, okay, well, this is not helping me. What do I need to do? So he made me awaken even more, like that next step, and have more grit in it, have more Jaguar in it. It's like, I got to do this. I got to tell him, study with Francisco and study with Panduro and learn. And what I learned there is exactly what I said earlier. And I want to point it out. It's huge. It's huge. That emotions have nothing to do with other people's behavior or what's happening in our lives. Emotions are hormones that run in our veins. And if you want to address them, you can address them by addressing someone else that 10 years ago divorced with you, or 20 years ago hurt you, or whatever the trauma is. As difficult as it is, the trauma itself, the events are not what we're dealing with. You're dealing with the aftermath of chemistry in your own body. And it takes that, facing the lion, facing the tiger, facing the jaguar, facing death, to say, it's my last moment and I'm going to do everything to, defend myself from this lion, as big as it is. To get a knife, get a piece of steak, do what I can do to save myself. So I studied these hormones. I studied the endocrine system. I went deeper and deeper with the shamans in understanding the motor system and the nervous system of the body. And to pause here, because you're not stopping me, so I'll stop.
That's about
How
to.
many years to study, without wanting to open this whole other box, being in Greece and loving Greek mythology and Greek philosophy and history, Socrates had said, know thyself, and you shall know the secrets of the gods and the whole universe. And forever, this was a philosophical statement, as is yoga was philosophy. Now I'm beginning to realize these things not as philosophy, but as mechanisms, the mechanics. So to know thyself is what I started to do. And I started studying emotions as glands and electricity that runs through the body, and hormones, chemistry that runs through the body. My emotions of sadness and anger and resentment and fear were all acidic emotions. They created an acidic environment in my body,
which cancer loves.
And when I started replacing every tear with a smile, and when every fear with I love you to someone else, helping some old people and helping some animals at a refuge there. And when I started being of service, and I took the focus off myself, and they were saying, well, I'm alive today. Why am I crying for, because I'm going to die in a week or in a month? I'm alive.
Yeah.
Well, how can I help today? So I put together 18 tools, and that is what I teach, because soon after, within a year, and again, I will stop. Within a year, with these teachers and a couple others that I do refer to, maybe for another moment, Francisco and Panduro said, you got to start teaching this stuff. I'm like, if you want to stay cancer-free now, and I'm going back and forth to the NIH every 3 months, They're seeing that that tumors are becoming small and disappear. The doctor, my surgeon, says, whatever you're doing, keep on doing. But they were all like, he brought in all the doctors and they were like, wow, whatever's happening here is not supposed to be happening. They say, doing great, keep on doing what you're doing. So they tell me, if you want to remain cancer free, you have to teach us. And I'm like, how am I going to teach you? I'm just a white person. I'm a photographer. I'm not class. And then Francisco said, teach it in English. So I gave myself the task, and you have to teach this. You have to be, you can't be, they said, you can't be self-centered. You can't be selfish and keep all this. We all live together. No one cell lives alone. It lives with a whole body. No one atom lives alone. It lives with a mass. And I needed to offer this. And running this, and as I started, basically I started to do some scientific research and bringing the idea of understanding that each and every tool, how does the rattle work? What does it do to the brainwaves? How do the crystals, how do the feathers? What is the psychotherapeutic, but also the science behind how these tools actually change the tumors in my body? How do they actually, instead of 3 months in 2003, here I am, 2025, instead of having left an orphan, I have a 22-year-old bearded, wonderful guy studying sociology and anthropology. Why I'm here today. And I am of service. I am giving this to people because we all needed it. You all need this.
Okay. All right. So few questions. I really want to get into shamanism and what my understanding is versus what you're teaching. But I have to ask you, was chemotherapy ever on the plate for you? Because that's what most people do when they have cancers. They do chemotherapy.
I did not drink that bitter cup.
Okay.
It was offered to me, and
Right.
they said, I will not drink this.
I would have guessed that was offered to you. That's kind of the traditional treatment.
I will not offer my opinion on that. I will say that it was not for me, but I did drink a lot of medicinal plants in the jungles. And then just following Panduro, who was a medicine man, plant medicine man, with doing different diets, a lot of fasting and drinking specific teas that we would make there, etc. So my chemotherapy was ayahuasca.
Okay. Which is a whole different mechanism.
It's a whole different mechanism of bringing you in front of confronting death and awakening to it, and kind of like beginning to be, because, and I'll leave this as a parenthesis because I don't think ayahuasca is a panacea or something everyone should do at all. And actually, to be frank, I think it's becoming a fashion, and I think people are all about, and it has nothing to do with reality, really. It's an experience you could have, and it can be a medicine that can really change the structure of the chemistry of your brain. And it did offer me that opportunity. It offered me the opportunity to experience dying, because that's what happens when you drink ayahuasca. You experience dying and going into the spirit world. So it allowed me to meet with Christ. It allowed me to meet with the Jaguar. It helped me in many ways shake off my previous self and my previous belief systems about life.
Okay. All right. So that's my next question, because I have a familiarity with shamanism, probably not the Jaguar path. I've done a workshop back in 1995. It was a long time ago. So I'm familiar with things like the spirit animal, shamanic journeying to the lower world and the upper world, and soul retrieval and things like that. But this sounds like it's something different.
It is that too. The big part of my training was to work with the paranormals. And here is this, I'll answer this to you question, and also in reference to something you said earlier, that, many people would want this, but they don't give it a chance and they stay in their everyday life. So one of the big things that I realized, and I now know very clearly, is that we all live in yoga refers to it as samsara, because what I realized was the yoga and the Taoists, the martial artists, and those who created Chinese medicine, as well as the shamans of Peru and Africa, they're all talking about the same thing. They've all studied what the human nature is, from physiology to psychology, and actually all the way to astrology. And what does it mean to be alive and to function and to interact with others and to engage with life? How does all that happen? The behind the scenes, behind the scaffoldings, right? So what happens is that we come into life, and as babies, as 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, we begin to get some images. And by the time we're 6 or 7 years old, we have downloaded images and patterns and behavioral and emotional patterns from our parents. Our parents, they could have been wonderful, they could have been medium, they could have been that, whatever they were, they downloaded. And especially in that time before language was even written in our brain and our understanding, it would download it directly into our nervous system. So if my parents every Monday and Thursday would have a little bit of a fight of sorts, or they get frustrated, I started knowing that Mondays and Thursdays I got to be frustrated. That's what my nervous system did. What did we start beginning to get used to? I got hungry every morning for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Then for years later, then I think that the right thing to do is eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which really never happened in humanity until 200 years ago. It's like this. We're not meant to
Exactly.
eat.
It's not natural.
And everyone listens to me like, what? Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It's like, did that and how? I don't know why. It's
brainwashing.
It's like, so what happened in my life too, as well as everyone, is that I am growing up, and when I'm looking, I am now, and I'm looking around me, and what I need to do to survive, as any mammal does, I need to look at my surroundings, and I need to behave according to my surroundings in order to survive. So what do? I eat 3 meals a day. I go to school. I go to college. I do a career. I get married. I have kids. I'm imagining that in retirement, I'll do things that I would want to, because now I can't. And so forth and so on. And I live a life in the box. I live a life in a box. And everyone has an opinion, and everyone has an opinion, writes it on Facebook and Instagram, and they write it with a strong voice. And they also see other people that have another opinion and say bad words about those that have, or at least thumbs down, at least, we don't like yours.
Or a laughing emoji.
emoji, sometimes sarcastic, or the angry face. Oh, the end.
Yeah.
If you look at those
Yeah.
emojis, and that's all the emotions we have, and it's really, or most people live in. So, long story short, that's the story I lived in. Oh, I'm a successful photographer, successful career. I'm driving a nice car. I'm kind to people, and that's good enough. I go to church 2 times a year, and Easter and Christmas. Like, I'm just doing things according to what is around me. But now, left in the jungle alone, parts of my training was to stay 10 days in part of the jungle alone. Anduro would leave me and would come back and get me, because there was no other way I would find my way out of where I was. I fell apart. My reality fell apart. I would look around me, and the only thing I could see was like afraid of if I was going to see a jaguar or some wild animal. And there were a lot of wild animals. It's the jungle. It's the jungle. It's like they're all there. All my meetings with animals were wonderful. No animal actually ever threatened me. But my city person thought that the animals are dangerous, because that's what I was taught. By far not true. Of course, if you corner a grizzly or if you attack a puma, it's going to defend itself and will create damage. But overall, no animal will choose to attack a human being, and that's something to be said, because it looks a lot like paradise, really. All animals will eventually would like to exchange love and affection, as I mentioned, of course. But here I am alone in 10 days of silence and 10 days of aloneness and 10 days beyond despair. Having to get out of despair, because it's one thing, you can't stay in an emotion for longer than an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. You just distract yourself. You think you're going to be forever in anger. You just park it somewhere so it lives in your liver. You have the stress. You can't be expressing it, so you park it in your spleen. So now you're really damaging all these organs while you're not expressing it. You're in the box doing, I'm going to work. I'm driving back home. I'm in the supermarket. I'm in the bags. And all this illusionary life. And then you realize that damage done to the internal organs is maybe many times not reversible, not heal, is not possible to heal it, and definitely not through some of the methods that we know. Again, having said that, I think that it's really important that we address Western medicine and Eastern and holistic medicine. It's really important that we arrive. And when I came out of this aloneness in there is that the box crumbled. And, I always thought like, oh, I'm a great photographer, but I still don't feel like I'm reaching my full potential. Have you ever had that feeling? And I talk, yeah, it's like, yes, because your full potential doesn't exist in the box of this illusionary idea of what humanity should be, depending on what city you live in. Because if you're in Athens, Greece, this is the way you should be. Very different if you're in New York, very different if you're in California, but very different if you're in Peru. The norms are very, very different. Where expectant behavior and all that are very different if you're in India. And if you behave like an Indian in the United States, they're going to be like, you're weird. Something wrong with you. So we all get into that box and behave as Facebook instructs us to. Stay in the lineage of what is common sense. And that's a survival mechanism. I have to be in this common sense, which surrounds me, in order to survive, to be accepted, to be friended, to be given some work, to be able to get some food. I can't get myself pushed out because I will die. It's like the herd of bisons or water buffalo going across the river all together. They all have to be together, or else the alligator will get us. And that's the mammalian fear we have. Yet you recognize, like the Buddha and like Christ, when you go out alone, you find yourself and you find your relationship with the divine. You are plugged in directly without anyone out there. You are it. You are the Christ. You are the Buddha. You are the love. You are the affection. That's what we are. We're a spark of affection. And everything else addresses it, hides it, the walls of fear, barbed wire of anger, things we put up thinking that those things protect us because we were once hurt. They may work for a bit, but they're really damaging us. They're really damaging us and not allowing us to be free in living this gift, because we're all here. You know what I feel, Carol? We're here to live a day. It's a day. It's a day. I turned 60 and I'm like, oh my God, I survived when I was 40. How did I become 60? I'm getting to this new kind of idea. Should I, be loving more, engaging more? I think because it's a day. It's a day. And
I mean, that's what's in the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day. Give us this day. It doesn't say, give me 20 years. Give us this day, the daily bread, the nourishment for this day.
That illusion of past and future, I'm taking this all an illusion. There's a very now. And what happens is, and to clarify this, because I've heard it as teachings, like that time is an illusion. And I was like trying to grasp it philosophically. I teach this and I want to convey this, and I hope I can convey it even in this few minutes that we have together, is that the only actual real thing that exists is this moment that I can talk to you, Carol. Because at this moment that I'm talking to you and our beloved audience, your beloved audience that is listening to us, I can't talk to someone else. I'm not talking to my son. I'm not talking to my elderly mother. I'm not talking to my beloved teacher, Francisco. I'm not talking to my beloved students. I'm only talking to you. This is the only one reality. And when our interview is over, then I'll have the next only day and only moment. And when you realize this, what happens is you learn how to fully bring yourself and your whole attention to the moment. And when you do that, you realize what kind of power we really have, changing and transforming.
Yeah.
We have a say. Where I had gotten to cancer had a lot to do with what I was saying, what I was deciding. I brought myself there. It wasn't happening outside me. It was happening inside me. And I'll pause there and say, now I know that everything is inside us. It's my predisposition. So I'm going to ask you, in case if someone hurt you, someone angered you, I want to ask you, to our audience, to ask yourself at that moment that happens, that someone insults you, hurts you, pushes you, cuts you off. Where were you at that moment? Just a second before that happened. Where were you? What was your predisposition? How did you play a role in that happening? So it's about a matter of really assuming responsibility, that when we do, then you are tapping into your full potential, because nothing else matters. It's like, what am I doing here right now with you, Carol? My decision,
Yeah.
your decision,
I
right?
get
It's
that.
our decision
Yeah.
to be here together and
Yeah.
have this conversation in front of your
Yeah.
beloved audience so we could share this because we care. This is part of our mission. My mission, it's your mission. We're joining missions this moment. And as we do this as an active doing, an active offering, we are fulfilling and bringing up our full potential and fulfilling our mission.
Well, sorry to stop you again. But what I want to do is, because you've provided so much great wisdom, and I think your story is so compelling, so interesting, but it's threaded with all of these wonderful spiritual teachings. So I want to give you, we are at our hour, but I want to give you the opportunity to briefly share about your program before we close, because I know that's something that it's coming up, I think, your 9-month program and whatever else you can offer. So I want to give you a chance to be able to talk about that. And maybe I'll have you on again so we can talk
I
some
would
more.
love to come again. I love your energy, and I'll be more than happy to, an honor to come again. So we'll talk more about that. Yes. Now, since I was instructed by my teachers to teach, I've created a 9-month training that since 2007 begins every November and goes through June. The idea is 9 months. We meet 1 weekend a month. The download is 9 months of the gestation period where we're reborn. In these 9 months, I teach 18 shamanic tools that were the most important tools that I found actually gave me a shift, a shift that stayed with me. And this is what this training is about. It's a training we've offered to thousands of people, and everyone, all hands up, say it's life-changing. It is, because these things, when you hear them, you cannot unhear them. And they're more important sense than common sense. They're deeper sense, right? And what Carl Jung worked with shamans of Africa, he called this uncommon sense. And it's uncommon sense when you hear it, you're like, yes, these light bulbs turn on, and then you're there. And the really important part of this training is, again, every November, we're actually starting November 16th, 17th for our first weekend. And we meet, as I said, 1 weekend a month all the way through June. You will learn 18 shamanic tools in the way we teach it, and because a lot of it comes from my understanding about behavior and cognition and how we filter and understand things from our brain to our chemistry, through our endocrine system. It is structured in this way that it changes you at an endocrine level. It changes you in your predisposition. You walk around in a very different way than you used to. A big shift, if I could have to put it in one sentence, is leaving from the place of I want or I need, and coming to a place of saying, how can I offer? And I live in abundance. I am in abundance of love and joy and health. Love, joy, and health. I hear so many people talking about money, and it's just money is just so useless. I've met so many people with billionaires that are sad and unhappy, and to be rich.
Yeah. We got to create something different.
Be happy and to be on a mission. So the 9-month training starts November 16th, 17th. We meet 1 week in a month. We do beginner's yoga on Saturday, beginner's Sunday and Monday morning, a way to get in the body, and also a way for me to teach in the physical body. Again, beginner's yoga. You don't have to have done a day of yoga. And even if you're sitting on a chair, you could do what I teach. It's a way for me to show and teach everyone how the nervous system works, and to feel it as you stretch your arms up and down on the side, how the meridian system is connected to the endocrine and to the whole endocrine system and the hormones. Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Sundays, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. We have a group of people that are always amazing, wonderful people. We have doctors, therapists, yoga teachers, body workers, Reiki people, and people that have done nothing, that are just curious and somehow stumbled on it and would like to learn either how to heal themselves or actually to start a practice. No matter where you are at, we're coming out of the other side. We've had scientists, we had astronauts literally with us.
Yeah, I'd like to know who that is. My husband's a former astronaut.
I'll share this in a private conversation, if that's okay.
Okay, because I know a bunch of astronauts. Yeah. So I just want to say I am going to publish this right away. It'll come out next week. So that'll give somebody out there. I mean, I've got friends. I have friends who have problems with their livers, their spleens, their hearts, cancer. I know a lot of people out there that could possibly hear this as the call for their healing and their next level of consciousness raising. So I will get this published right away to just give them a chance to participate in your program. So I just really appreciate your sharing your story, your work. I love that your shamans told you you got to be in service to stay cancer free. I think there's something about shifting. I love that story about shifting from self-pity. I know a lot of people who are dwelling in that space right now. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a human condition, but it's just calling us to move out of it. Each calling us to move forward and bring ourselves into the world. So, okay, last words. Anything else you want to share?
No matter what you're feeling, take a moment and inhale. And notice what you're inhaling is much more than air. What you're inhaling is life force, and what it's made of is love. The whole structure that keeps your body and your atoms together to create the beautiful you, the whole structure of the planet and the universe and keeps all the planets in place is a force of love. And know that you are love. Know that you are love. Never allow yourself to feel that you lack it, because you are it. You inhale and exhale love.
It's beautiful. And so it is. That is the truth. Thank you, Ray, so much for being with me today. It was such a pleasure, such a joy, and such a
Carol,
gift.
the honor was mine. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks to your beautiful audience. I look forward to talking more anytime you want.
We will. We will. Thank you, everybody, for being with us.